Surprises at IEP meetings are the worst. It doesn't work out well when you're bringing information to the table that other people don't know anything about. In fact, this is an old school habit that simply needs to stop. I want to welcome you to the Special Education Inner Circle podcast, parents, teachers, admins, and therapists. If you sit at an IEP table, this is for you. I know from sitting at hundreds, probably thousands of IEP meetings that when there is surprise information at the IEP meeting, things simply don't go well. In fact, there's really no way to recover once we've gone down the path of somebody being blindsided at the IEP table. So I want to help you figure out, how do you have these tough conversations before the IEP meeting, because they need to happen. Is an extremely old school process to think about my side of the IEP table and your side of the IEP table, and my information and your information. It has to be a team effort. That is the only way for us to stick to the purpose of preparing a child for further education, employment, independent living by meeting their unique needs through this IEP. So there's a couple of ways that we can make sure that we're having the conversations that we need to have before the IEP meeting. We need to get beyond the teacher who feels like she's breaking the rules by giving the parent a wink, wink, and kind of like an elbow nudge of like, hey, you know what we're going to talk about at the IEP meeting? Sure, that still happens, and it probably always will. But what if we just open up and start being honest with each other? What if we start bringing the important information to the table before, quite honestly, we even get to the table? So there's a couple of ways that this can happen. First of all, I want to make it very clear to everybody who works for the school district, that agenda that you're creating, if you're creating it, most school districts do have an agenda for each IEP meeting. Sometimes they are published, as in printed out or shared ahead of time with the team. Sometimes they're shared with the parent. Sometimes it's just a known agenda that's not on paper. It needs to be put onto paper, or virtually put onto paper, and shared with the entire team, and that includes the parents. From the beginning of when the introductions happen to the end of how you're going to wrap it up, it is important to have a streamlined agenda created before the IEP. Now, for parents, there's a way for you to contribute to this agenda, and it is critical to make sure that we are not having surprises at the IEP table. You know that feeling when you're holding it, this information in of, I need to talk to my child's team about placement. I don't like this. How am I going to bring it up? What am I going to do? You know what? Don't wait for the IEP meeting. When you get that IEP notice that says your child's IEP meeting is going to happen in 10 days, your response back to that notice can be, yes, I will be there, and I have the following concerns, or would like to discuss the following topics, depending on what your concerns are, or your topics, or the issues, or just the content that you want to discuss at the IEP table. You can adjust what you're calling this list, as in, it's my concerns, or this is my parent input, or I'd like to discuss the following. Whatever way you choose, put it in writing before the IEP meeting. It is not serving anybody well, especially not your child, well, to show up with surprises at the table, because the team will not be prepared. Again, some of you might be thinking, but that's what I was told to do. That's what a special education lawyer told me to do. That's what an advocate told me to do. That's what my special needs mom friends told me to do. I get it. It is a habit that is in our special education community to withhold information and then bring it to the team and then just see what happens. No more does that have to be the process. You can make this better. You guys, we have not gotten very far in our special education system. It is currently 46 years old, meaning that we've only had a couple of generations of teachers go through the system, leading us to what we hope is better outcomes each and every generation. But we have forgotten about the foundation of team building to make that happen. It's not just about a better curriculum or better technology. It's about a better working team together to get to those desired IEP outcomes. So schools, I want you to share that agenda. Parents, I want you to share in writing your parent input, even on the tough subjects, ahead of time. But I'm going to discuss something really critical that happens at almost every IEP meeting, and that's leaving the discussion of placement to the last 5 minutes of the meeting. How many times have you sat in a meeting where you're discussing all of the goals, all of the present levels, all of the therapies, and then we get to placement and there's hardly any time left to discuss where are the services going to take place? Now, this is a big deal for many parents, most parents. In fact, it cannot be discussed first because we don't say a child goes into this classroom and then what are we going to learn? We absolutely have to discuss what are we going to be focused on? What does the child need? And then where are those services going to take place? So positioning this discussion at the end of the meeting 100% is correct. Leaving 5 minutes and then springing new information about how a child needs to go to a completely different program based on the needs that we discussed, that is not appropriate and it should never happen. Everybody at that table should absolutely know what the full continuum of placements being considered are before they walk into that meeting. Being a special education teacher in the past, I know what it's like to have students in my classroom and then recommending which program they go to next. But yet, I'll be honest with you, I never saw that program. I was doing what my boss told me to do. Or recommending programs to parents where I know they had never seen the program. One of the first things that I started to do when I left my job as a teacher and I started coaching parents and teachers on how to build better IEPs is to make sure that everybody knew what the full continuum of placements was. And it was really important to make sure that the parent saw those programs, the teacher too, if we could make that happen, but we don't know what's right if we don't know what's wrong. Meaning that we have to see a variety of classrooms or a variety of environments of where services could be delivered so we can all participate in a discussion with equal information to see what is most appropriate for delivering the services of special education. So surprising this, new placement, this new classroom, this new delivery model at the end of the meeting with 5 minutes left is never going to build trust on the team. It's never going to get us on the same page. This has to be a topic that we talk about before the IEP meeting and before every IEP meeting. Meaning that this happens all the time. Where are the service minutes going to take place when it comes to speech therapy? Where's the direct instruction going to take place? Where's the inclusion going to take place? Where are all these things going to take place? And why are we leaving this to the last 5 minutes? So again, no surprises when it comes to placement. Make sure you have an agenda. Make sure parents, you're giving your input in writing prior to the meeting, and make sure that one of the biggest topics, placement, is discussed prior to, meaning we're not determining placement. I'm not asking you to predetermine anything. I'm asking you to ensure that everybody has information about where services might take place, could take place, or do take place in different areas of the district or the school or the classroom. So when it comes time for the end of the meeting discussion, that there are no surprises, that things need to change right now, and then asking parents to make big decisions and agree to big changes, that's simply not appropriate. So let's decide right now together to make sure that you are not bringing a surprise to the IEP table. You can't control other people on the IEP team, but you can control the information that you have and the information that you bring. You absolutely can move the IEP team further towards working together and having that trust if you personally decide not to bring a surprise to the IEP table. I encourage you that if you want to talk about how can you build this trust on the IEP team, whether you're a parent, teacher, admin, or therapist, how do you create these agendas? How do you create an effective parent input statement? How do you see the full continuum of placements? Come on over to the Special Education Inner Circle at specialedinnercircle.com, where we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to answer your questions, and I can't wait to help you dig deep into what needs to happen next for your child or for your students inside of their IEP to make sure each and every one of them is prepared for further education, employment, and independent living. I can't wait to see you inside of the Special Education